Access, the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome, fellow Owens, to episode number 174 of the podcast of OA. This is your host, Myron Rumsey, and I am joined by our good friend, Phil Bova. Phil, my friend, how is life going in this crazy, crazy world right now for you?
Life's going okay, my friend. Everything's moving full force over here. A little bit of sad news. My wife, Denise, tested positive for this virus, and we think she contracted it from a family member, and that's kind of sad. And luckily, I am unscathed. I tested negative, and our little boy Clark, we're still waiting for the results back from his test, and hopefully he'll be negative as well. And then I hope my wife gets a speedy recovery.
Absolutely.
Other than that, looking forward to going back to work soon, I hope.
It's a hard thing out there right now, and obviously we all wish your wife a very speedy recovery. Not that she seems to be having any symptoms, but obviously she's positive. So
yeah. But other than that, everything's good, man. Clark's growing up. He's doing great. He's getting everywhere and getting into everything.
I like that. I bet it's such a fun time.
It really is. And the funny thing is, my wife and I were talking, and she was asking me if I felt okay because I didn't have my results back yet. So we were always worried about if I was going to test positive. I was like, I'm a little fatigued. I go, but I can't decide on whether it's something that I may have contracted or if it's because I'm having to chase Clark around all the time. I'm more active than usual.
Well, from the Blog of OA side of the world, this last week has been a real humdinger, I tell you. I sound like my grandfather. It's a humdinger. But earlier this week, the WordPress had an update, as they often do. But this particular version of WordPress, this particular update, broke the template, the WordPress template that we use for the Blog of OA. And basically it made it so that when you went to the Blog of OA, you couldn't see any content. You could see all the graphics, but no content whatsoever. It was completely broken. And I was at work that day. I'm like, darn it, I can't do anything until I get home. I didn't say darn it, I said something else. And I was like, I can't even start to work on this until I get home. And I spent probably a good 6 or 7 hours once I got home trying to figure out what to do. And I ended up having to go out and buy a whole new template and try to reconfigure it so I could at least get something back that was somewhat close to as functional as the last site was. And I'm not quite 100% there, but it's going to have to do for now until I can continue to work on it. But that was just the beginning of my woes. My wife and I have a 10-year-old car, which we finally decided it was too much to repair. The repair bills were getting to be almost as much as the car was worth, if not a little more. So we were in the process of getting a new car at the exact same time as all of that happened. So it was a little hectic. And then, of course, as all of us comic fans heard, there was a bloodbath of sorts at DC Comics this week with a great number of staff being let go. Looks like almost everybody from DC Collectibles got let go. Everybody from DC Universe got let go. It's just been, from the comics world's perspective, just really, crazy is the word of the year for 2020, I think. It's just interesting. But listening to Jim Lee's comments recently about the future things, he was really kind of emphasizing the digital stuff and a 20 to 25% title reduction. And we've already seen it in the November solicitations, which also came out this week, showing books like Young Justice and Aquaman and Hawkman being canceled.
Yeah, I wonder though, the thing about the Aquaman, because Kelly Sue DeConnick is she's not going to be on the title anymore. Now I haven't gotten up to the current issues. I'm really behind in Aquaman, but I've always been an avid reader of the book myself. It doesn't say final issue on the solicits. It just says finale. So I don't know if there's any. There's a lot of speculation that it's being canceled, but I wonder if that's going to be the case. And I'd find it hard to believe that a top tier character like Aquaman would be canceled, especially since with the success of the film. And so I think I mean, if I'm DC with all this news and all this, I mean, this crap that's coming out, I mean, they need to start dispelling things instead of letting them get inflamed even more than they already are, and they're really, really bad at their PR when it comes to stuff like that because fans pick that stuff apart, and, you start canceling big books like Aquaman. I mean, you're gonna start losing a lot of, I don't know, man. You're just gonna start losing a lot of fans. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I heard all the news coming out, man, if it wasn't for GL, I'd be done. I would say, you know what? I'm gonna go read my indie comics and I'll be just fine. And quite honestly, GL is really the only one, and Wonder Woman are really the only two that I really, really adhere to reading when they come out on a weekly basis. And I've even fallen off Superman lately, but just because I'm tired of everything being the Bendis show over at DC. It's like Bendis and Batman. I mean, those are their two things that they focus on, and it's like, okay, I understand Batman's a big seller, and don't get me wrong, everybody has there's Batman fans, and I'm not one of them, and I'm not trying to troll on any Batman fans here, and I understand he's a seller, but I didn't know that DC Comics was going to be primarily Batman, because if you look at all the solicits that are coming out, 80% of them are Batman titles, or have Batman in them, or are Batman related. It's like, and I'm like, okay, don't we have other people here? Don't we have other I mean, where are all these characters going? I mean, the Kyle Rayner fans, the Guy Gardner fans. I mean, that's just in the Green Lantern universe.
Well, let's not leave out the Simon Baz fan.
The Simon Baz fans. I'll give them their credit where credit is due. Where's he at? I don't know, man. I mean, DC decisions. I mean, don't get me started on DC Universe. I mean, it was a failed exploit from the get-go. I mean, everybody got excited about it, and I never signed up for it because I was like, there's no way it can last. And it didn't.
Right. Well, and what we're hearing now is that all of the DC Universe content, not the comic book stuff, but the series, the Young Justice and and Titans and those shows, they're all going to go over to HBO Max. And Jim Lee has said, we don't know what DC Universe is going to morph into, but he implied it wasn't going to go away. And you wonder, is this going to be? This is me purely speculating. That if they're talking really about pushing more digital, will they use DC Universe as their digital platform? And
I mean, I would assume that would be the one way to do it.
Right.
I mean, you don't have any other choice at this matter, I mean, and of course there was all rumors that AT&T wants out of the comic book business and stuff like that. It's like, well, why'd you buy the company then?
Right. Well, part of me is wondering, will they use that as their digital platform and move away from Comixology? That way they can control the profits. They get more of the money that way. And does the printed material become more of a collected edition? Do we move to kind of the Injustice model where you had, a weekly digital book and then you had a monthly floppy and then you had trades? I don't know. It's really going to be interesting to see.
And your trades are always been they're a moneymaker, when they put them all together or whatnot. Because, I mean, more often than not, fans will, I don't know. I mean, the Tom Taylor stuff, like, I love reading this. I mean, he's a great writer, and I love reading his weeklies. But when all that Injustice came out, it got too much. And I was like, I'm just going to wait until it's all collected and do it all at once. And that's what I did. So I would spend the money on the trade when it come out and bought that. From what I understand, that's a lot of where their profit comes from is their collected contents. So I maybe from a business standpoint, it's more, it makes more sense economically for them to pivot to that role. I don't know. I'm not in the business, so I don't know how it works. But I don't know. I mean, I trolled hard on this DC Fandome that's coming out this week, and I was really excited about it first, but then all this stuff started exploding in everybody's face when it comes to all this news, and I had to take a step back because I was like, I'm excited about it, but this doesn't sound right. I mean, and why would they make all these decisions now, knowing that this fandom is about ready to kick off? And a couple of my Twitter followers responded, well, that was planned before this and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, that may be, but there's still money involved and there's still a lot of decisions involved. And when this was coming out, I mean, they could have easily made these cuts or made this decision, a while ago, and not so close to when you're going to have a big show about all your content, And of course, from my understanding, it's a lot of it's going to be heavy in the big business stuff of it, like you're Wonder Woman 84 and and the Green Lantern Corps series or whatnot, and then the Zack Snyder stuff. Well, that's not comic books fan stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's not. Well, what's happening with Green Lantern moving forward? Are we going to get comics for that after Grant Morrison and Sharp are done? Where's that news coming from? So I don't know. There's a lot of unspoken word when it comes to DC and their PR department, and I've always railed on that because I think it's poor. However they handle things is their business, and they're entitled to that. But I think fans have a right to know certain things when they're the ones buying the product. I mean, it just seems unfair. But we live in an unfair world, so I mean, I guess I really can't rail too hard on it.
Well, the Wonder Woman book, not Wonder Woman book, the Aquaman book was originally scheduled to end a little bit earlier. So I don't think this was a cancellation drawn from poor performance. I think it was a planned ending for the series. That's why it doesn't say final issue the way it would traditionally say.
Okay.
That's the way I'm understanding it. Now maybe I'm wrong. But
then again, maybe they're pivoting into something else. I mean, because that whole 5G thing was supposed to kick off, and of course they had to get away from that. So I would assume that they got something coming on the horizon. I mean, but again, what does that entail? Well, again, DC has never been at the forefront of providing fans, stuff of upcoming events, and that's what I always liked about that Wizard book. Remember the Wizard book that used to come out?
Oh, Wizard magazine, yeah.
Yeah. It would always talk about stuff that was up and coming, and it would always talk about things and big things that were on the horizon and stuff. But DC has always been so secretive about their initiatives, and I'm trying to wrap my brain around why. Are they afraid like it's going to get out and somebody's going to copy it like Marvel? I mean, they copy each other as it is anyway. I mean, they do stuff in tandem, and a lot of the times their stuff is pretty similar when it comes to big events that they release. I don't get it. I don't get the logistics behind it. But I mean, I don't know. I wish somebody could answer it. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's serious when they cancel a Bendis book.
Yeah, right. Like that'll ever happen.
It did. Young Justice was canceled.
Well, I mean, come on. I mean, Young Justice. I didn't see Young Justice as something that was going to be ongoing. Now, I can guarantee right now, Legion of Superheroes will continue.
Probably.
But and Superman's not going away. I don't know. I haven't been a big fan of him since he came on because I felt like they put a lot of weight into him as a writer coming over, and he didn't really do much for me. I mean, Dan Jurgens. I mean, I've always loved him writing Superman, always, and I always will to this day. It's till he's whenever that he's been my biggest writer of Superman. Mark Waid was good at writing Superman, but I don't think Bendis is. I mean, I don't know. Maybe other fans feel differently, and that's fine. They're entitled to their opinion just as much as me. But I felt like they put too much stock into him when he came over, and he ate up a lot of the news media stuff because everything was about Bendis and everything was about this and everything was like, my gosh. I mean, they seemed like they shoved this man in your face so much, and I don't know. I don't know, man.
It's I don't know. I agree with you. I'm kind of tired of hearing about Bendis. The other thing is DC Fandome. They announced the schedule of events. A big shocker. There's not a Green Lantern event anywhere. Which surprising and disappointing to say the least. Now there are a couple of panels that are to be announced. So we could get surprised. Maybe we'll get an HBO Max panel about the Green Lantern series. Don't know. There are two. I only saw two now. Maybe there's more. Maybe I missed them. But I saw one to be announced panel and one that was a surprise DC Comics panel.
Well, there was HBO Max did put out a tweet, something alluding to the Green Lantern stuff.
Right. So I'm hoping. I mean, there's a couple of rumors out there, and I don't want to repeat them because I don't think they came from a reliable source. But there are some rumors out there about casting. So maybe we'll be surprised. I hope so. I kind of called them out a little bit the other day on Twitter because they put out all of these hashtags with different logos, and all the main characters in DC were represented except for Green Lantern. Like Green Lantern was like the only main DC stalwart character that did not get emoji, hashtag emoji. And I made my comment was that I understand that Abin Sur gave Green Lantern his ring, but I keep forgetting that DC keeps giving him the finger.
That's good, man. That's classic.
But and I do want to apologize for something. I have not been able to review the Green Lantern 80th hardcover and the Space Traveling Heroes book. I just got them. My comic shop finally got them, and I felt bad because I ordered them before they came in because Diamond did not ship him his books. He didn't even get any copies of Green Lantern Earth 1 Volume 2.
That's sad.
So he doesn't know, and he doesn't know when he's going to get them. Now he reached out to the new people that DC are working with, and they can get it for him, but it could be several weeks. But Diamond hasn't shipped their order. He's just so frustrated because he's not getting the books he needs. And as a fan, I feel bad because this is probably close to $80 worth of books that I've had to go elsewhere for because he hasn't been able to get them.
That's disappointing. Now it's the Green Lantern Green Arrow one, right? The hardcover by Denny O'Neil and Mike Grell.
Yeah, the Space Traveling Heroes book. And I just got them in, and I was going to work on them this week, and then the website crashed, and it kind of took all the energy out of my sails, so to speak. So I've got those two books to do. Plus, I just got the Green Lantern Earth 1 Volume 2, which I'm going to do that one first because I'm really excited to read that book. It's all new material. I always put that before reprints. So that's first on my agenda.
You've had a tough week, man. Cut yourself some slack.
I know, but I feel bad. Part of me gets frustrated because I don't get the books sent to me ahead of time like a lot of the other reviewers do. And I get it. I'm a niche within a niche. But other sites that I see that are getting their books for review aren't as highly rated on the web as we are in terms of there's a website out there that tracks comic book sites, not just comic book sites, but basically any category of sites. And when you go out to it, when you look at the top 75 comic book sites, we're number 52.
Really?
Yeah. And some of these sites that are getting these books for free to review aren't even in the top 100. So I don't know whether because I'm honest with my reviews, and sometimes they're not, they're not. I try to be positive. I try to be very even-handed, but sometimes I don't like it, and I'm going to be honest with it. But I think I'm fairly positive. But for whatever reason, they don't want to give me that same benefit. So I'm actually spending more money on buying them digitally as well as in paper copy so that I can use the digital copies and get the graphics I need for the reviews. It's just, it's frustrating. And I feel a great obligation to represent the Green Lantern stuff. But when I can't be timely, I really feel bad about it. And,
well, but at least you're saying true to your form, Myron. All differences aside, getting free issues is one thing, but getting free issues, but being armed into okay, well, you need to review this in our way and not your own way, and being faulted for doing it truthfully. That's a disservice to them, because it's okay, well, you're giving me this book, but you want me to review it in a way that you deem appropriate, and it's not how it should work, and using your own money to buy the product and reviewing it how you see fit shows more fan base than the falsifiers do. The ones that just, oh, I got this great book and this is wonderful and blah 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 and this and that, they got it free to review, and then they're gonna totally praise it or whatnot, when in all reality, it's a crappy book to begin with. I don't know, man. Getting free stuff is nice and everything like that, but it shouldn't be with the contingent that you need to do it in a way that they feel appropriate just to gain their, I guess, I don't know, support.
Right. And they haven't come out and said that. And I'm not saying that's necessarily the case. But I do think, especially when it comes to books like the hardcover trades, like the GL Earth 1 Volume 2, or the Morrison books, where it takes time to digest stuff, I'm at a disadvantage because I'm not getting the book 5 days before it hits the stands in a PDF that I can sit there and digest and research and really put out a high quality review like I would like to do. And I know it's self-imposed pressure. I'm putting pressure on myself to try to compete with these people because I feel like people look to me for my opinion or the website's opinions. But maybe not, I don't know. Maybe it's true that people really aren't paying attention to what I'm doing and it doesn't matter. Whatever. But I know it's self-created pressure to try to do things as good as some of these other sites do with maybe a more fan perspective. And, I have to lighten up on myself a little bit, but it's hard for me to do. I am someone who is very hard on myself in every facet of my life. So it's hard sometimes to give myself an excuse for anything.
That's because you're a good person, Myron, and Far Sector is your favorite book out there right now.
But anyway, so this episode we have a review of the latest issue of The Green Lantern by Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp and Steve Oliff. And I'm really excited to talk about this one. This, I think, for people who think that this run has been a little too Grant Morrison-y, this book is about as straightforward comic book adventure as I think we could ever expect from Grant Morrison.
Yeah, it was good. And the art was, again, wonderful.
Yep. So let's take a quick break. I know I need to get us a drink because I'm parched. And we'll come back here in a minute or two, and we'll also do the Know the Core segment.
That's right. I got a good one. Hello, fellow Owens, and welcome back to the segment of Know Your Core. This week, we got one of my faves. Probably he's in my top 5 as far as Green Lantern Corps members. And of course, I have to do him service because we did Arisia last week, and this one is none other than Sodom Yacht. So let's get some general information about Sodom Yacht. First appearance was in Green Lantern Annual number 2, shelf date of 1986. Character was created by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill. He hails from Space Sector 1760 with the home planet of Dexam. And of course his partner is Arisia. So, Sodom Yacht was born a Dexamite and is currently a Green Lantern intergalactic peacekeeper operating under the Ion. I guess he's still doing the Ion. Well, he hasn't been around in a long time, but he operating as Ion, who if any Kyle Rayner fan knows, he held that mantle for a while, having become one of the most powerful characters in current continuity. Sodom Yacht was prophesied to be the future member of the Green Lantern Corps, mentioned in passing to Avon Sur by a demon named Kull of the 5 Inversions, who had been imprisoned on the planet Izamalt by the Guardians of the Universe. As a Dexamite, a race with inherent Superman-like powers, with a power ring, he would be nearly unstoppable. Despite this, in Kull's prophecy, he is still defeated as part of the final destruction of the Green Lantern Corps. And there you have it, fans. Sodom Yacht on this week's Know Your Core members.
This is Salak, Green Lantern of Sector 1418, and you are receiving the podcast of Oa.
The podcast of Oa.
Phil, that was a great know Your Core segment. When you said it was a top 5 Lantern and you were really looking forward to it, I of course thought you were doing Simon Baz this time.
I thought about it because he would be my probably my number 3. Psych. Not gonna happen. I will, however, do a service to the Simon Baz fans. He will be included on this segment, of course. I mean, he's still a member of the Green Lantern Corps, and he still has his fan base. I'm just not one of them. You know, it's funny because the guys over Emerald Enthusiast always gives me a hard time on Twitter. And so he had posted something the other day, and it was the Simon Baz character. Now, full disclosure, and I won't lie, I have all my collection of all my figurines, and I do own a Simon Baz figure. Mainly because the figure's cool, and it looks good with all the rest of the core members and stuff like that, and I like it, you know. I just don't like him.
And somebody else gave it to you.
Yeah, no. So Emerald Enthusiast, he posted a spot on Twitter where he did a review of the Simon Baz character, and it was doing like this camera motion around it and stuff like that, and I just put why ...
Well, you're a better man than me because I do not own a Simon Baz nor a Jessica Cruz action figure.
I don't have a Jessica Cruz yet. That's next on my list, but I do Simon Baz. I even own the Sodom Yacht figure that came out.
I don't have that one. That was one of the ones I missed.
Yeah, I went and got him. Matter of fact, I looked at him in the box the other day and can't wait to unbox those someday in my life.
Well, we have a good issue of Green Lantern Season 2 to talk about. This issue, you know, as I talked about before the break, a lot of people have had problems with the Morrison run, and that sometimes they find it hard to digest, or perhaps the narrative is a little headier than what they would like to get out of their comics. And this issue is really about as straightforward as I think you can get. Hal's in the Sector General Hospital recovering from his battle with Hyperman from the last issue. And while he's there, the Qua-Men strike. And it's all hands on deck as the Qua-Men go through Sector General and do a lot of damage to a lot of Green Lanterns and leave Sector General basically destroying itself in the atmosphere when they leave, and a dead Hal Jordan at the end of the issue again.
Hey, side note to Dr. Keldar, is he related to Starro? Because he looks a lot like Starro, but only a different color.
I've never seen that character before, so I think it's one he made up. But I kind of got a Starro vibe, which I thought was kind of neat. I just thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I also kind of got a feeling of like Itty. Do you remember Itty?
No, I don't remember Itty.
So if you pick up the Space Traveling Heroes book, that was where Itty kind of came about. Itty was like this little starfishy kind of looking character that was Hal's companion when he was driving truck across the country.
My gosh, I haven't read that in so long. You're right.
He eventually kind of leaves, but he looks like a little star. So I kind of got that vibe as well when I was looking at that.
I wonder if that's where they brought it back from. You know, because everybody knows that who's read this so far that, Grant likes to pull past stuff and bring it forward. So that could be part of what he did with this one. Yeah,
it's hard to say. I love how this issue starts out with this character that we come to know as Crassius Quipe 6. He's very like a cowardly lion type character here in the beginning. And he strikes me as that patient in the hospital that is always calling the nurse with little things here and there. And we find out, of course, later on, that's kind of the Jekyll persona.
Right. What do you think of Qua-Man? He's bad looking, man.
That whole group of people is really kind of cool. And we of course, we see Nurse Olakwa. Would we finally get a name for her? That 6-armed woman we saw way back in issue 2 when we saw Evil Star in the hospital. This is the same nurse that we saw then, which very cartoony, very far out. I think really kind of cool. But we see, Trilla True is there and Rika is there. And they're basically trying to, there's a whole bunch of Green Lanterns that have come to see how Hal is. And the nurse drops everything and leaves Crassius wanting something. She goes off to take care of Hal. And 3 hours later, he's still like, "Nurse, I need something over here." And she's taking care of Hal. And Hal's not doing so hot. The ring, he's lost his ring. The ring is being repaired in the non-biological wing of Sector General. We see a bunch of Green Lanterns there, and then the Kwon-Men strike and kind of lay waste to all of those Green Lanterns. And none of them I recognized other than background characters. I don't even know if any of them had names. Do you remember any of them? I remember seeing them in background, and that's about it.
No, I don't. But I do have a general question about the ring on this in this particular issue, and maybe I missed something, or maybe I'm just overlooking it. I didn't know whenever you took a Lantern's ring, you would take on that ring bearer's original powers. Because you notice how Hal Jordan does that with this ring in here.
It's almost like the ring learns how the wearer, at least in Morrison's version, the ring kind of learns how the wearer functions and tailors itself to the wearer, is the impression I'm getting. And so when he puts on that other character's ring and he goes to try to make a hand, it's a very robotic looking hand. That's my assumption. That's purely me conjecturing on the whole thing, because that's something new.
Is that, I was going to say that's new, because I don't think I've ever read that before.
Right. And I feel bad for Trilla True and Rika. And as I was reading this issue, I'm like, man, these are new characters. Morrison doesn't have to keep them around, and I like both of those characters. Is he going to trash them? And then we get later on this issue, and you see Trilla True lose an arm, and then you see poor Rika get shot through the chest.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And I love how Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp portray how Rika kind of uses his crystalline biology to kind of come back and attack some of the Kwon-Men with these little tiny versions, these little crystalline beings. And then Hal's there, and you see Rika, and he's literally half the man he used to be, with those little short stubby legs. I just had to laugh. It was so funny, so inventive. I just enjoyed the heck out of it.
It's cute, man, because Reich has become a popular character in this series. He's been a standout, because you and I talked about him a lot before, and I genuinely like him as a Lantern character, and I like how him and Al always interact. They seem to have a lot of camaraderie for one another, and it's really cool.
It's neat. In that Lantern, they do give his name, Zui Zun. Never heard of that one before. Kind of an interesting little character. But you see how they're really struggling, and I love how Liam Sharp has that one panel where Hal is in the hospital outfit and the Green Lantern costume is coming up around him, and you can just see that gritty determination on his face.
Oh yeah, when he's transforming.
Yeah.
When he got all those bandages all over him too.
Well, it sounded like they had these biological beings inside of his body repairing him from the inside.
Right, because it did mention that he had a lot of internal injuries.
Yeah. And I love the part where he goes, I do hands, okay? I need a hand. And the ring goes, really? A hand? And then when you see Crassus Quipe turn into the more fierce version of himself, I thought it was funny. And we get a call back to issue 2 where we saw Evil Star in Sector General, and Hal goes there. He's still in the coma, but the Starlings are there, and so he basically kind of recruits the Starlings to enter the fray, which I thought, again, it's inventive.
And yeah, it is creative. It really is. And his art, he posted something the other day about issue 8 being his. Now that of course that hasn't come out yet, but he posted something the other day about his issue 8 being his the issue he's most happy with. It's the best art he ever felt like he's done, and he can't wait for people to see it and stuff. And and while he posted that, of course, I'm reading this, and of course, all the ones we've read before this is like, Jesus, man, how much more can this man push himself to his art? Because this one here has been just fantastic, Yeah,
and I thought, he really in this issue creates that sense of tension, because this hospital's under attack and people are kind of running everywhere, and how do we get people out and that kind of stuff. I just thought it was nice that the way that he kind of built it up.
Yeah, agreed.
I also loved the little teaser where Hal asked the nurse if he dated her once. Kind of funny. But Hal basically trying to get everybody off the ship, get everybody off the lifeboats and everything. And he's basically drawn the thin green line essentially for them to cross, and they cross it and knock Hal down, and then he collapses and they run away, and we discover the Sector General is falling into the atmosphere. And then we see Hal with a really nice nod to the Spectre look with the green cloak, and he's dead again. And I don't know if this means we're going to say we return to Emerald Space, or what death is going to be like for Hal this time around, because it seems like every time he dies, we get something different.
There was one of the solicits said something about Carol Ferris was going to enter the fray at some point.
Yes, she is in the solicitations for November, but it also talked about a multiversal type story, and maybe it's not really our Carol. I hope it's our Carol, because I really would like to see them re-engage a little bit.
Sure.
But this issue, man, I thought it was a lot of fun. It's almost like, when they cut the series from 12 issues down to 8 or 9, they had to rush things to get things going again to meet because they had a story they wanted to tell, and now they've got less issues to do it with. And then they got a breather, and it's almost, this is again conjecture. I feel almost like this book is one where they're like, hey, we got an issue to play around. Let's just have a fun adventure story, because this doesn't tie into things so much, at least not that we can tell. Now, maybe this does tie into the whole big war topic they're talking about, and maybe this was just to get Hal off the table, essentially, so that the big bad war could happen. I don't know.
What do you think about the Guardians? They look like a different take on an ethereal character. I mean,
it's interesting. It certainly is a different take. I don't know. I miss the Guardians that were well-intentioned, but yet they were just out of touch because they were so evolved. They had lost touch with, I don't want to say their humanity because they were never human to begin with, but they're out of touch with the rest of the universe around them because they've been, immortal and at it so long that they're so evolved that they lack the ability to relate to the life of a common being, for lack of a better phrase. Sure. And I miss that, they were altruistic, just out of touch. And everybody's wanted to do this whole play on they're just, they're misguided and they make bad decisions and so on. And that's just never a version of the Guardians I liked. I didn't like it when Jeff Johns turned them bad, but I think he ran out of ideas, quite honestly, between you and me. I felt like he just kind of ran out of steam a little bit there near the end and didn't know what to do. And it's like, well, hey, I can turn the Guardians bad. But I just didn't find that, to me, not of interest. I understand we're in this mode where we want to question everybody who's in authority. And sometimes that's not a bad thing at all. But I was hoping the Guardians would be one of the things that would escape that.
Yeah, good point.
But fun issue.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was good to see it back. I mean, it just seems like these issues are few and far between, and it takes forever for you to get to read one. You know what I mean? It's like, that's like with that release of Earth 1 Volume 2, that came out with Gabriel Hardman and Corinne Benko. I was like, oh gosh, we got 2 Lantern books we get to read now for a change.
I know, it's great and they both came out like within a day or two of each other, which is great. I can't wait to dive into that book, and that's going to be the subject of our next episode. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm sitting right here now, holding it and looking at it, and wanting to dive headlong into it. I know people like Far Sector, and we joked about it a little bit earlier, but I really, and again, I haven't read it, so this is me completely talking out my backside. But I really think if this is such a great adaptation with the sci-fi stuff thrown in that takes into account the real Green Lantern mythology at the same time.
Yeah, the first one was phenomenal. I can't wait to get into the second one. Like I said, I'm holding mine too. I'm waiting to where I can just really sit and concentrate on reading it. Normally my reading times have been sparse because of Clark, so usually it's like he'll go to his shutdown times usually around 7, in between 7 and 8. And usually I do my reading between like 8 and midnight.
I'm hoping to take tomorrow and lock myself in my lantern cave, put on I always have a playlist that I listen to when I read Green Lantern comics that I just love to have the music in the background. It just kind of adds to the experience for me. I know it's probably stupid, but I like it.
That's stupid. Oh man, that's awesome.
I'm telling everybody to leave me alone. Don't interrupt me, because I'm going to basically jump in and immerse myself in that universe.
It's a good idea. I'm envious.
All right. Well, we don't have any listener feedback this episode. So rather than prolong things, why don't we wrap it up now? And we'll be back probably next week. We know you and I need to have time to read this beautiful hardcover and get our opinions formed and have a chance to talk about it. Maybe we'll do that this next week.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Well, everybody, it is still a wild and crazy world out there. So please stay safe, keep the ones you love protected, and treat each other well. As always, keep that power ring charged and make every day your brightest day. The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can send your emails to podcast@blogofoa.com. You can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Twitter and Facebook. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.